My name is Roy Kendrick. I'm the Managing Director of the Direct Group in Cheddleton, where we provide service exchange components throughout the UK and often abroad as well. This particular video is based on the fact that I want to try and emphasise now the damage that is being done. And I'd like to call it the horror museum, really, in a sense. But our scrap bin tends to tell the story more than actually a few items here, which I will go through in a moment. The scrap bin is full of stuff that's coming in from different locations, whether it be axles or whatever, where people have put some serious effort in to put the biggest bush in they've ever had at the end, which is totally not acceptable as far as we're concerned. And we do it in a different way. I'm going to explain a few things to do with the steering boxes, and I'm going to explain a few of the actual techniques that we'd like you to sort of have a think about as well. But in doing it, I'm going to show you how we get some of the components back so you can relate to that. So I'm going to start with an obvious one, really. Obviously, this is not fair wear and tear. This has been in an RTA, and this is the steering box that it fit on. The story was that it was parked and a lorry reversed into it, and how the actual steering box is mounted on almost the front cross member, it's inevitable it's going to take the damage. There are other ways this box can get damaged as well, because the actual drag link goes to the near side wheel. So every time it hits the curb or it takes an impact on the left hand side, the actual forces are going straight through into the actual steering box itself. But in this particular case, this is definitely a major RTA. If we move across, and there's another example of where a shaft is actually sheared, that seriously takes some force to do that on this slightly bigger steering box. This is a steering shaft on a steering box. This has just been, well, for a better phrase, battered to hell to try and get the actual drop arm off. There's no excuse for that. On one of our videos on our website, www.direct-group.co.uk, we actually have a video there that's, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes long, that shows you how to take the steering box off, how to actually remove the drop arm off here correctly, and also how to then refit it all back together again and fit it to your vehicle. There's a series of videos, so that would be well worth it. That is totally wrecked, that sector shaft, as you can see. There's absolutely nothing to do with it, and nothing we can do with it at all. We're not talking about things where there is natural grainings or whatever. There's something there. If you can see that and get in on that, you can see something's happened there. That may well be a little bit of something that's broke up and got into the actual system, that's got trapped between there. Okay, so we're not talking about that at this present moment in time. We're talking about the things that you can do if you just take a little bit more care and you listen to the expertise of what we're trying to portray to you at the moment. If you come on contamination to a point where quite a bit of that is down to the fact that the fluid's not been changed, not been flushed through. If you have had a pump or something break down and it's sent shards of this, that and the other all through the system. But if you're looking on something like this, you'll see that something has actually got trapped. And that is also the torsion bar area and part of the main valve that actually enables the steering box to turn left and right and whatever. So whatever's got trapped in there would be in your system and would need to be completely cleaned out. If you're getting issues and you say to yourself, the steering's not right completely, then you should go back to square one. Don't just fit a new pump, don't just fit a new steering box, you have got to flush that system completely out. Obviously this has been absolutely battered on the end. There's one thing you don't want to be doing with this sort of equipment is is hitting the end of these sector shafts at all. Because not only does it damage this, it transmits all the damage straight through into the back of the steering box and actually just takes the box out. We have a solution. There's a solution on the actual website if you can't get to getting one of these. But this is the solution. This is a puller that you can slide down the actual drop arm when you've got applications where there's a plate involved in between. You can slide this down the drop arm, you can position this, and this ram on there will then apply a 10-ton force to the actual drop arm, and then eventually you'll be able to just, at the very least, just have a little tap and it'll pop off. There's a few bits and pieces before you get to that stage, which is also very important. One of those areas as well is the sector shaft nut that actually holds on the drop arm. You'll see on this side it's got a ridge round there that you actually locate once you've got it torqued on proper. You don't mess about with this. You fit this with a proper torque setting to get it on there, because it's an actual taper. You actually put this on then, and then what you do then is you make sure you actually physically knock the tab washer back into the actual allocated slot there. Okay. To do this, once you've got it tightened up correctly and the actual drop arm's in the right place, which is on some more of our videos, you need a simple little device like this small chisel. That small chisel is designed to do two things. It's designed to actually come into there and knock back the tab washer so it's clear of all the threads. When you put it back on again, the drop arm, you can use this then, turn it on its side and give it a little tap, and you can knock it back into the actual slot as well. Again, have a look on the website to sort that out. But that is so easy. If you do not do that exercise, right, when you come to take the actual nut off the relative drop arm, and you haven't cleared the threads at the end here with the actual tab that's there, it's been pinned in, if you haven't cleared it out, and then you put what we call a battery gun on there, and you rip that off, what you're going to end up doing is ripping the end of the threads off here, and makes this actual component completely useless. And you'll probably be hit with a surcharge. So again, look at the videos online. This extra one will help you. If we move on to more sort of general sort of stuff that we see this quite frequently, where somebody's had a right go at that, and it may well be the bolts would never come out, but generally speaking they do if you take a little bit of care. So that would be completely gone. Presumably this whole unit's had to be changed, because obviously now you can't get the actual port mounting on there as well. So that's something that comes in quite frequently. If we jump over to another fan motor, if you look at this fan motor, somebody has decided that whatever's happening at that end, that's going to get battered to try and get the connecting part away from there, and obviously they've really damaged that down, so that makes that useless. But they've done a double whammy really, because they've managed to drop the old unit on the floor or wherever it may well be, and they've bent that back over, which again makes this unit non-reconditionable and subject to a surcharge. We overhaul a serious amount of front axles, and if you look at this component here, it has got one or two goes at trying to get a bush in there. That is absolutely ridiculous. The amount, if you turn it that way, and the amount of material they have taken out in comparison to there, what they should have taken out, gets extremely close to the end of the actual axle beam. When we get these axles back on service exchange, we immediately put them in the scrap bin. And we make sure that they're cut in a way that nobody will ever be able to use them. But just look at the amount of hammering and banging about that's been going on with this particular unit as well. The difference in what we do, for your information, that's the standard side bush that we put in all our front axles. And that is put in a special way, and that doesn't move. Very rarely does it move. The pins are then matched to each and in each of the individual bushes that are put in there, and makes a perfect fit. The contrast between the two, that and that, you can see with your own eyes. That, in our opinion, can be deemed to be dangerous. These are a series of shafts that have come out, this particular type of steering pump, and quite clearly all the actual splines are quite badly worn. But these will find themselves back into pumps and back onto the vehicles. Now, they have to drive something. They end up driving this shaft into an electric motor. And when you start to apply that into that, what you end up with is a situation where the splines on the inside of this also go. And then you get a situation where they take the splines out there, they then put a new pump back on here with a new shaft, that takes the splines out there, and it's a repeat thing all the way through. What we also do with this is we actually pair this up with a pump. So when we sell this, it goes out with its pump, and that is a really good, nice, snug fit in there if it was to be pressed in, just pushed in. Bit of grease on there. It's essential to put a bit of grease on there, or a bit of grease in there that you should be using to push it in place, and that will protect it also as well. So we make the new shafts, we fit them into the actual electric motors, and then we put a pump on there that actually matches up with it. One of the favourites is UJs. I haven't got the actual working UJ I wanted to show you really, because it's being used somewhere else today. But that's the UJ that goes on top of your steering box. Various sizes for the various different serrations. Serrations, lads? Yeah, yes, serrations. They're not splines, they're serrations. The serrations are incredibly strong. The way that the actual pair of them come together when you bolt them up against each other and fix it in like that. There's a bolt goes through there, you put that on there, and obviously that goes on. That serration meets the other serration. It is phenomenal. I'd have loved to have met the person who actually designed and manufactured serrations. They're brilliant. But it doesn't do anybody any good if what you do is you put that on so far, and then somebody puts a bolt through and belts it down and hits the actual edge of the actual steering box. How about that? So that's been done by, somebody putting the bolt through. Instead of lining it up correctly with here, they've actually run it down here and smashed it in. There's a good chance, actually, if you come down much lower than what I'm the top of my finger here, you're going to cause this box to be binding on the top as well if you don't line it all up. But I think that tends to do the right job if you put it in the right place. But you can see the damage that's been done by that. Somebody's hit the serrations and done that. But I've picked this one out for another reason. If you look at this closely, somebody has put an easy sleeve on there, actually on top. And to emphasise that, I'll show you how the other one looks. That's how it should be. And somebody has put that easy sleeve on there. Absolute joke. Absolute joke. I mean, it's partly covering, when it comes down, it's partly covering one of the orifices which enables the oil to transfer around. I don't know who in their right mind would do that and fit it then to a bus or a coach. That is an absolute disgrace. I think that's had its work, hasn't it? That was a bus we took out of somebody's axle. There are other issues as well from damage. That's taken an almighty situation to brake that like that without, you know, being around the vehicle at the time. It's probably difficult to know what's actually physically happened there unless it's been whacked. If you don't get the spec right at the manufacturing stage by giving the right performance out of a pump, then that can have consequences actually and affect the steering in certain ways. There are instances where, for instance, you can do this. There's a general rule that you're supposed to be able to turn the steering wheel in 1.5 seconds by hand like that, both ways. There are vehicles that can do it quite easily one way, but the other way they're struggling to do that with slight falters as well. And there are technical reasons about that, which I will go into on another video at some stage once I've cleared it with the people involved. I don't want to sort of say, but we've been able to come across a situation recently and we've been able to actually cure that problem. So if we start sort of recapping what we're doing and all this, that and the other, there's one thing I will say to you. If you're dealing with steering boxes in the main and you're taking the drop arms off, then get out of, if it's the sort of E400, the double deckers, the big things, you know, the whatever, BMIDs, then the Max is fabulous. This Max costs less than probably about three quarters the price of buying one of the shafts that's been damaged by hitting it with a hammer. This smaller one, around 600 quid, something like that. It's made to stand and do the smaller vehicles completely. This one I've just showed you earlier will do the 200s, E200s, that sort of size, up to the largest vehicles. That makes the job so easy. We know some vehicles it could take literally ages and ages, and then desperation gets in because they've got to get the vehicle back on the road. We've got one here now, which is one of the last pieces I'm going to just show you. And clearly, you know, getting the vehicle back on the road was absolutely the main priority. And I have a certain amount of sympathy with that as well. But this is an 8098 steering box, and they don't come cheap. And it's fitting sort of the E400 range, I think the vehicle was. And there's a plate in the way and all sorts of reasons why you can't get to it. And it's very similar with the new bus for London, you can't get to it as well. So that's why that puller I've showed you there was originally designed for. But just look what they did. They got a saw to it and they chopped it straight through. Goodness knows how long it took them to do that. Obviously that box is completely and utterly bamboozled now. And, you know, but it just shows you that people under pressure will do that sort of stuff. If they'd had one of those pullers, they'd have had this off in 10 minutes. But that's the situation that we face quite frequently. And that was one of the worst I've seen. There should be a shaft sticking out here. One more thing I will say about all this sort of stuff we're talking about. It has torque settings. Everything has torque settings, you know, whether it's bolts for a port or whether it's, you know, whatever. Apply that. What you mustn't do, particularly when you fit in big steering boxes like this, is you use big battery guns and with an unknown amount of torque going into the actual putting the bolts into the chassis, and there are, you know, to hold these in place, you know, you should use a normal way of tightening the bolts up, and then they should be torqued in place. One of the issues that's been noted is that when you do use the battery guns, you end up starting to already stretch the threads that's in the chassis. You then put another bolt in next time, and then that then becomes very difficult to get back out again. So you're already on a downward slope. So we say around all the sort of relative stuff to do with power steering, hydraulics, fan motors, and whatever. Don't use battery guns on that sort of stuff. You know, use the proper kit that's been laid down. Again, you'll see a video on our website for that. Okay, we spoke a little bit about a manufacturer being slightly off piece with its specification. Well, you know, these are the sort of things we're talking about. that is a unit that replaces them, and that is the correct one to go with the actual shaft that goes into the electric motors, and that actually produces all the effort, without going into the technical side, that it needs to make sure the steering activates both ways successfully. Thank you very much if you do watch this video. If you've got any comments, you know, you can get hold of us via the website you're probably watching it on for any more questions. We do have some data sheets that go out with, you know, these sort of things. Every time they go out, there's fitting instructions which go. Unfortunately, when we get them back, the old units, in the bottom of the box, the actual fitting instructions has never been actually read, which shows us that people are, you know, believe they can do the job, and quite frankly, quite a lot can. But the rare times you have to do steering boxes, I'm sure the young apprentices we've got here will concur that they've not actually physically done a steering box on a particular bus, but okay, there are new types of vehicles coming through now, more and more, to a lot of the garages. But when you have to do it, if you get that wrong, there could be consequences. And if you get it wrong in terms of removing the old unit, you're going to cost your company you're working for quite a lot of money, and somebody's not going to be very happy about that. If in doubt, give us a shout. 01538 361 777 and ask for the technical support. Thank you very much indeed. Cheers.